Strange Tales from Search and Rescue. The disembodied voice in the woods. For more than a decade, I'd been an active member of a volunteer search and rescue team in the awe-inspiring southern Appalachian Mountains. Yet, on this particular day, as we relentlessly navigated through the treacherous terrain of a place aptly called Devil's Hollow, a shiver ran down my spine. Our expedition was fueled by urgency and desperation to locate a missing hiker who had mysteriously disappeared 3 days prior. The isolated area was veiled in an aura of enigma and peril, solidifying its foreboding nickname, a fitting sobriquet for such a place. The looming trees seemed to whisper secrets as we pressed ahead, our senses tuned to every twig snap and creak in the wilderness. The sun had long since disappeared behind the dense, looming canopy of the forest, casting an eerie darkness over the already dim surroundings. The thick trees seemed to reach out with gnarled branches, creating a foreboding atmosphere that made our steps hesitant and cautious. My search partner and I trudged along a narrow game trail, the weight of our heavy boots crunching on fallen leaves and twigs. As we called out the missing hiker's name into the stillness, a sense of unease settled in, like a cold hand gripping at our hearts. Suddenly, a faint voice pierced through the silence, calling out desperately for help. "Over here! I'm over here!" it cried out, making us suddenly hyper-aware. Our hearts pounded with both fear and hope as we followed the sound deeper into the dense trees, unsure of what we would find at the end of this search. Every rustling leaf and snapping twig seemed to be whispering secrets to us as we rushed toward perhaps an unknown fate. With hearts pounding and breaths ragged, we frantically sprinted through the dense forest towards the source of the haunting sound. But, like a mischievous spirit, it always seemed just out of reach, leading us deeper into the unknown. The voice that echoed through the trees was both ethereal and eerie, as if it didn't belong to this world. It continued to call out for help with a desperate and pleading tone, only to suddenly let out a chilling laugh that sent shivers down our spines. Despite our initial hopes that it might be the missing hiker we were searching for, it quickly became clear that this voice was not human. Instead, it taunted us with its otherworldly laughter, playing a cruel game of hide-and-seek in these treacherous woods. Our fear and confusion only heightened as we realized we were not alone out here in this wilderness. Our hearts pumping with fear and adrenaline, we hastily abandoned the area, our nerves on edge after hearing that eerie, otherworldly voice. The sound had seemed to come from all directions at once, echoing off the trees and into our very souls. We could feel the hair on our arms stand on end as goosebumps rose on our skin. The missing hiker was discovered a week later, clinging to life, several miles from our location, but the origin of the haunting voice remains a mystery. Devil's Hollow proved to be true to its menacing name, its dark and tangled woods seeming to whisper secrets and warnings in the rustling leaves. Even in broad daylight, an unsettling sense of foreboding lingers in the air in this place, like a weight pressing down on you. We just couldn't shake off the feeling that whatever was watching us out there was some sort of cosmic prankster, and not a human. The Vanishing Cabin. The loud and urgent call activated our SAR team, causing a jolt of adrenaline to run through us. We were alerted that a young couple had not returned from their camping trip in the remote Mount Jefferson wilderness area. Without hesitation, we quickly gathered our gear and set out to search the specific region where they had received their permit. The thick forest surrounded us as we ventured further into the wilderness, the towering trees blocking out most of the sunlight and creating an eerie, if not menacing, atmosphere. Every step felt like a descent into the unknown, relying solely on our training and determination to lead us forward. Our hearts leapt with hope as we caught a glimpse of smoke rising from the trees ahead. The thin wisps of gray swirled and danced in the air, beckoning us toward our destination. With renewed energy, we quickened our pace, each step bringing us closer to these missing persons. As we drew nearer, though, we could make out a tiny, charming cabin, nestled in a small clearing. Its wooden exterior blended almost seamlessly with the surrounding forest, giving it an enchanting aura. Wisps of smoke curled from the chimney, a comforting sight that confirmed someone was inside. We smiled at each other, grateful for the warmth and shelter waiting for us just beyond those walls. With bated breath and adrenaline still coursing through our veins, we cautiously approached the door and rapped our knuckles against it. Our announcement was met with deafening silence. My team lead cautiously reached for the handle and gave it a gentle push, somewhat surprised when the door swung open effortlessly, unlocked and seemingly unguarded. The hairs on the back of my neck stood at attention as we stepped inside, unsure of what awaited us in this lone shelter. As we entered, the warmth from the fire in the wood stove beckoned us closer. The scent of burning pine filled the air, making the cabin feel cozy and inviting. Half-eaten meals sat on the table, giving the impression that someone had been there not too long ago. Yet there was no sign of the missing couple anywhere. No clothing strewn about or equipment left behind. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a faint trace of their existence. The silence of the cabin was eerie, with only the crackling of the fire breaking through. A sense of mystery and unease lingered in the air, begging for an explanation to this strange disappearance. Even now, a shiver runs down my spine as I remember that moment, stumbling upon a fully stocked, inhabited cabin in the heart of an isolated forest, yet there was not a soul to be found. The overwhelming sense of unease crept over me once again. Despite our exhaustive search efforts, we were unable to uncover any clues or evidence of the missing couple. They turned up later, some miles away. This hadn't even been their cabin. Whoever or whatever had been in that cabin, it remains an unsolved mystery. The spooky mine shaft. As a rookie SAR member in the mountains of Colorado, I experienced this particular rescue mission just a couple of years into my search and rescue career. The call came in late at night. A group of hikers had become lost and stranded in an area known for its abandoned mine shafts. The exact location was unknown, leaving these hikers vulnerable to stumbling into any number of abandoned mine shafts that littered the area like forgotten scars on the rugged landscape. The dark of night added an extra layer of danger to the already treacherous terrain, as every step could lead to potential disaster. Despite the adrenaline pumping through my veins, I knew we had to act fast before the situation became even more dire. Walking ahead of the rest of our team, 3 of us cautiously made our way forward. Our goal? To locate our missing hikers before they found themselves in real trouble. As we trekked through the dense underbrush, we stumbled upon a trail of deep footprints that led straight towards a gaping maw in the earth. It was a foreboding sight, an ominous shaft opening, large enough to swallow us whole. We shone our lights into its depths, revealing a horizontal tunnel that seemed to stretch on endlessly, but with no visible vertical drop, at least not yet. The air inside was stale and musty, adding to the eerie atmosphere. With a sense of unease creeping over us, we knew this was where we needed to go, into the unknown depths of this underground tunnel. Reluctant to venture into the dark mine without backup, we banged rocks together and shouted out into the cavernous depths. An eerie silence greeted us at first, broken only by the faint drip of water echoing off the walls. But then, from somewhere deep within this black tunnel, a haunting sound emerged, a low, guttural moan that seemed to reverberate through the very earth itself. It was a sound that would send shivers down your spine and cause the hair on the back of your neck to stand up. We knew with certainty that this was not the voice of any living being, let alone the missing hikers we were searching for. Then, as if on cue, the radio crackled to life, letting us know that the missing hikers had been found in another area of the mountains. Before panic could set in, we swiftly retreated from the entrance to this tunnel and huddled together, anxiously awaiting the arrival of the rest of our team. Our hearts raced as we imagined what horrors could be lurking within that abandoned mine shaft. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, we were relieved to see the other team members approaching us from a few yards away. They were, of course, oblivious to the danger that had nearly consumed us, As we regrouped and made our way back to safety, my mind couldn't help but wonder about the source of the unearthly noise that had sent us running for our lives. Was it a creature, a ghost, or something even more sinister lurking deep underground? The stories I've gathered over the years as a search and rescue volunteer are etched into my memory like haunting ghosts. In those vast wilderness areas, there are always natural and human dangers lurking, but there are also unexplainable mysteries that defy logic. My team and I have discovered that there are some places we have to tread very carefully, no matter how desperate our mission to save someone may be. It's a lesson we've learned the hard way, with each chilling encounter leaving us with goosebumps and an indescribable sense of unease. The disappearing hiker. A chill wind whipped through the snow-covered peaks of the Sierra Nevada mountains, making it almost impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Now, it was in these treacherous conditions that we received word of a missing hiker, lost in one of the most remote areas of the range. The recent heavy snowfall had made the search even more dangerous, with the threat of avalanches looming over our every step. Despite the risk, we assembled a tight-knit team of experienced rescuers and set out into the frozen wilderness, determined to find the hiker before another storm hit and worsened their chances of survival. The howling winds and biting cold gnawed at our resolve, but we pushed forward, knowing that every second counted for this lost soul in need of rescuing. After a few long hours of trekking through the relentless snow, our spirits were lifted when we finally spotted a set of footprints leading up towards a pass. Our excitement grew as we radioed in our position and eagerly followed the tracks. As I led the way, breaking trail through the thick snow, my eyes caught something ahead. A lone figure standing immobile on a rise, their back facing toward us. The stark contrast of their silhouette against the blinding white landscape was hopeful, but somehow frightening. Was it a fellow explorer or something more ominous? Since nobody responded, we approached with caution, unsure of what lay ahead on this journey. "Hey, hello there! We're search and rescue! Stay put!" I shouted, relieved we'd finally found the missing hiker, regardless of the precarious terrain. Despite our approaching footsteps and eager calls, the figure remained stock still, its back still turned towards us. A chill crept up my spine as I realized this was no ordinary hiker. The clearing we were in was too remote for any other adventurers to be wandering about, especially after a fresh layer of snow had blanketed the area. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. Was this a dangerous stranger or something even more sinister, something evil? The distant sound of wind whistling through the trees echoed in my ears, but the figure remained eerily still and silent. Something wasn't right, and I just couldn't shake off the feeling of impending danger. With determination and a steady grip on my cross-draw pistol, I led my team forward through the icy landscape. The biting wind whipped at our backs as we made our way towards this unmoving figure in the distance. As we drew closer, the anticipation was only outweighed by the fear. Finally, I reached the figure and gasped in shock. Before me stood an all too realistic human form, a snowman, if you will, wearing human clothes. Every intricate detail was there. Somebody had made this with precision and care, leaving me wondering who or what could have created such a masterpiece in the middle of this frozen wasteland. It was both mesmerizing and frightening at the same time. Now on high alert, my team and I regrouped, scanning our surroundings with wide eyes for any other signs of life or another set of footprints leading away. But all we saw was our own trail snaking back the way we came. This terrain was treacherous and unforgiving, with jagged cliffs and deep drop-offs waiting to swallow anyone who made a wrong step. And yet, within half a mile or more of that looming scarecrow/snowman, we'd seen nothing out of the ordinary. How could something like that have appeared out of nowhere in such perilous surroundings? Goosebumps prickled along my skin as I shuddered at the thought. We were definitely not alone out here in the snow. It's a mystery that will remain unsolved. The Crying Woman on the Mountain. Even now, the memory of this one particular SAR mission still haunts my dreams. Our team had been urgently summoned to search for an experienced female hiker who had disappeared in the rugged terrain of the Crazy Mountains in Montana. Our team had been urgently summoned to search for an experienced female hiker who had disappeared in the rugged terrain of the Crazy Mountains in Montana. She was a fearless solo hiker, known for her ultralight gear and daring expeditions. Despite our initial confidence that she had simply gotten lost or maybe even delayed on her journey, unease began to creep in as we realized the severity of the situation. The darkening sky and biting wind only added to our growing sense of urgency and dread. The first several hours of our search had been uneventful, but everything changed suddenly. I was leading my team along a narrow trail that wound along a high ridge when we first heard it. A woman's wail, long and mournful, like the cry of a banshee. It seemed to come from all directions at once, echoing across the rugged terrain and sending shivers down our spines. We froze in our tracks, straining to listen for any other sounds. The wind howling through the trees, causing the hair to whip around our faces as if in warning. After a brief silence, the wail came again, piercing and haunting, and then again. It continued like an incessant siren calling out for help. Our hearts raced as we exchanged worried glances, unsure of what lay ahead on this dangerous mountainside. Even my team of hardened mountain rescuers couldn't hide the fear in their eyes. The haunting sound, full of grief and anguish, echoed through the air, chilling our blood. We strained our ears trying to pinpoint the source, but it seemed to come from every direction, as if even the rocks and trees were mourning. The wind carried the sound with it, which gave us all goosebumps. We braced ourselves for what was to come next. But then, the deafening wail suddenly ceased, leaving us in an even more eerie and unsettling silence. My team turned to me, expecting a rational explanation, but I was at a loss. We frantically searched the surrounding area, hoping to find any clue as to where that sound had come from, but our efforts were in vain. There was no trace of the missing hiker, no boot prints, no abandoned gear or clothing, nothing that could explain the haunting cry that we'd just heard. We were left with more questions than answers, shaken by these strange events that had unfolded before us. Sadly, the search party found her body 2 days later, more than a dozen miles away from where we'd been. The impact alone, from what appeared to be a steep fall, was most likely fatal. If not, then she succumbed to the elements. And yet, as we craned our necks to catch a glimpse of the tragic scene below us, we couldn't shake the memory of that chilling sound that had echoed through the valley before. It was a cry that seemed to carry an unbearable weight of anguish and sorrow. We shuddered at the thought that it may have been the last moments of her own spirit as it fled her body. To this day, none of us can bring ourselves to venture back up into those mountains if we can avoid it, haunted by the memory of that terrifying wail. Whispering winds in the desert. It was just a typical day in the American Southwest desert until our team received an urgent call. A group of college campers had gone missing after their vehicle had broken down near the ancient Anasazi ruins nestled deep within the rugged Canyon de Chelly. The desert sun beat down on us mercilessly, casting harsh shadows across the unforgiving landscape. We raced through the cracked earth and jagged rock formations as fast as we safely could, our hearts pounding with anticipation and fear for the safety of those poor lost college kids. As we approached the site, our eyes were met with a haunting discovery: the abandoned remains of a broken-down vehicle surrounded by towering red cliffs and mysterious petroglyphs etched into the canyon walls. Other than the vehicle, it was like stepping back in time to a world untouched by modern civilization. Little did we know, our search would lead us even further into this ancient land and test our skills and courage like never before. As we pushed onward past the last known coordinates of this group, a sudden gust of wind swept through the canyon, carrying with it a whisper that was terrifying. The air became even hotter, more thick and oppressive, adding to the already tense atmosphere. Every step felt like a struggle against nature itself. This time the desert wind was unlike any other time. It was filled with some strange and unsettling energy. It carried with it a chorus of muffled murmurs and whispers, a multitude of voices blending together in an eerie symphony that seemed to emanate from all around us. We stood frozen, our senses on high alert as the hot wind gust carried these haunting, human-like utterances through the ancient canyon. Goosebumps prickled our skin as we tried to make sense of this otherworldly sound that surrounded us, sending shivers down our spines and filling us with an inexplicable fear. The sound of the whispering intensified, growing louder and more frantic with each passing moment. It was as if a dozen unseen voices were whispering at once, creating a cacophony of fear and urgency. Suddenly, a single voice broke through the chaos, swooshing loudly on the wind beside me. "Run! Get out of here! Now!" The words echoed in my mind, urging me to flee before it was too late. I, along with my other team members, found our feet and took off out of there. There was something sinister lurking in the shadows of that canyon. Without a single thought of hesitation or even our own safety, we sprinted back through the rocky canyon lands with all our might, fear and adrenaline pumping through our veins as we desperately radioed for an airlift evacuation. We felt like our lives were in danger. Looking back, I still can't fathom what could have caused such an unnerving phenomena to seemingly speak to us out there. It had to be paranormal, supernatural. The eerie silence of those canyons had been shattered by the whispers and then that loud voice. Even as we beat a hasty retreat, we just couldn't shake off the feeling that we were still being watched. Those poor college kids who had ventured out here were later found, but I haven't been eager to risk my own safety by going back out there in those dark, foreboding canyons unless absolutely necessary. The witching tree. Hands down, this was the creepiest thing our team had ever witnessed. We were searching for an elderly man with dementia who had wandered away from his family campsite in Northern California. After a long night of grid searching the forest with no sign, our fatigued team was ready to call it a morning and reassess with new resources. And that's when it came into view, a behemoth of an oak tree, ancient and massive, standing tall and proud in a place where it seemed out of place. The trunk alone was at least 15 feet wide, with gnarled bark and deep crevices branching off in every direction, and sprawling branches reached out like the arms of a giant, spanning an area wider than the room I'm sitting in right now. It stood in silence, as if observing us from afar, yet somehow we hadn't noticed it at all until the first light of dawn broke through the darkness, and we were right there, almost on top of it. Despite being no more than 100 yards away all night, it had remained hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by our curious eyes. As our steps brought us nearer to this towering ancient tree, its weird bark and wide-reaching branches loomed over us. A sense of awe and a sense of unease filled the air as we gazed up at what appeared to be thousands of small objects and tokens that adorned every inch of the tree's surface. Antlers, bones, teeth, human and animal, toys, jewelry, each one swaying and glinting in the cool morning breeze, creating an eerie tinkling sound that sent shivers down our spines. Some items appeared to be centuries old, with weathered surfaces, while others seemed even more oddly out of place. New and random additions to this strange collection, we couldn't help but wonder about the stories behind each trinket and what had brought it to rest upon this ancient tree. We stood there, gazing in disbelief at this scene before us. In all our years of search experience, nothing had prepared us for this. Becky, a skilled member of our team with native heritage, grabbed me by the arm and yanked me back forcefully. Her eyes wide with fear, she shouted for us to flee immediately. The air was thick with tension, and the smell of danger lingered as we stumbled backwards, our hearts racing with adrenaline. It was like a nightmare had come to life right in front of us. "It's a witching tree," she cried, eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave this place right now, before it wakes up." So we turned around, hightailed it out of there. As we got away from this eerie, otherworldly tree, there was a feeling of fear and confusion. It was clear that even reporting this sighting would be a futile effort. The gnarled oak loomed behind us farther and farther away, but its ominous presence still lingered in the dense forest. Its purpose and origin remained a mystery, but one thing was certain. I'm sure it was best to leave it alone and never look back. We hurried away from the site, eager to put this strange encounter behind us and return to civilization. With every step, the tension in our bodies seemed to slowly ease, but the memory of that sight would haunt us for years to come. Imagine a gargantuan, otherworldly-looking tree, adorned with a bizarre array of possibly occultic objects, had just suddenly materialized. Its gnarled branches reached up to the sky like twisted fingers, giving off an eerie aura. And if it did somehow wake up, I had zero desire to find out what horrors it might have held. The missing man was eventually found miles away, mercifully unaware of the ungodly tree we'd encountered. Its presence still lingers in my mind, haunting and unsettling me just thinking about it. How could something so out of this world appear in our reality? And what secrets did it hold within its tangled roots? I've got more stories where those came from, but I'll leave it there for now. Trust me, once you've been in search and rescue long enough, you see things in those wild, desolate places that can't be explained as anything human. Best just avoid certain areas altogether once you know they're, shall we say, inhabited.